the time is 6:03 and I'm going to call the meeting to order, and the meeting is being recorded, just so everybody knows. And we'll start the meeting by having the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to all our visitors. Does anyone want to speak? No? All right. So now we'll have a review and vote of our meetings from November 13th, 2023 and February 5th, 2024. The November 13th meeting minutes had the updates. Are you ready to make a motion? Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from Monday, November 13, 2023's Halifax School Committee meeting.
And?
Second.
Oh, sorry, no.
Do you want me to do them?
Yeah, we'll do them together.
Okay, and Monday, February 5th, 2024's Halifax School Committee meeting.
Okay.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Well, I'll do a roll call. Katie?
Yes.
Lori?
Aye.
Sorry, Jessica?
I'm actually going to abstain only because I wasn't at the November one,
Okay.
but I'm yes to the other one. Is that, or
Should we separate them?
sorry.
Yeah, we can separate.
Sorry,
them
I just
so
wasn't
you-
at
no,
that
it's
one,
okay.
so I don't like to.
No, that's fine. I forgot that.
So I'll amend my motion to approve the minutes from the Monday, November 13, 2023 Halifax School Committee meeting.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Look, Katie? Have a
Yes.
vote. Lori?
Yes.
Jessica?
Abstain.
Lauren? Yes. Okay. And
And then I'll make a second motion to approve the minutes from Monday, February 5th, 2024 Halifax School Committee meeting.
Second.
okay. All in favor? Well, we'll take a vote. Katie?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So, all right. Retainer agreement and possible vote.
In your
You have
packet
that?
tonight, you'll see a document from Duperre Law Offices with a one-year retainer agreement. This is pretty standard. Each year, we vote to continue, or we have voted to continue services with Duperre Law. You can see the amounts listed under number 6. The retainer amount is $800 per month, commencing on July 1st, 2024, and the retainer continues through June 30th, 2025. As you know, Attorney Duperre has helped with issues such as the regional agreement and updating it to make sure that it's meeting regulatory, and also with negotiations.
I really appreciate the guidance that he gives us. But there's a lot of things, a lot of nuances to this that we really need his counsel. So I want to take this time just to thank him for always being there and willing to answer questions for us so that we are doing the right thing.
Does anyone want to make a motion or?
I'll make a motion to approve the retainer agreement for the Dupree Offices PC as presented.
Okay, can we get a second?
I'll second.
Does anyone want to discuss before we vote?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Of course.
How long has Attorney Dupree been on retainer with the district?
As far as I know, for decades. In terms of not Attorney Russ Duperre, but prior to Russ,
his father.
Attorney Fred Duperre was here for many years.
It was always the same amount and everything?
No, it's changed slightly over the years, but not
Has this one changed from the previous one?
I think Sarah could tell us what the exact amount was last year, but I don't have it off the top of my
Okay.
head.
I
She
didn't
would
know if
have
I
to
could
look it
ask
up
the
in the
exact
budget.
amount and.
Yeah, you can.
Yep.
It's all public.
Okay.
Let me see.
The retainer for Duperre Law last year, I would assume it's in the budget for FY '24.
Budgeted for FY '24 was $19,500. Spent the previous year was $28,664.
So the retainer might be remaining the same.
But depending on how
Right.
much services we
We
use.
use, yeah.
Mhm.
So if I'm reading this correctly, it says that there's an 800, I'm sorry.
800 per, I know, that's what I was thinking.
That, I'm assuming that we budget an amount over what the monthly retainer amount of $800 a month is, am I? Because that doesn't add
Well, so
up
that's
to
what we use for the year.
19,000.
That's what we use.
No, that's for
So
the
we
year.
have two different types of legal fees that might, there's also special ed with Stoughton
Okay.
Chandler Miller, and I'm just trying to my computer has not connected to the network yet.
No worries.
It takes a
So
second.
I'm trying to open up the financial system.
So while you're doing that, can I ask some clarifying questions if that's not too stressful? So we pay Attorney Dupre $800 a month as a retainer. We had last year a budget of $19,000. Is the Attorney Dupre the only attorney that the district uses, or it sounds like there's another one for special education?
Yes.
Okay. and
We,
who is
we
that?
work with Stoneman, Chandler, and Miller for special education. And for all things regular education, we work with Duperre Law. And we work not only with Fred, but with Kimberly Roach from Duperre Law. So Kimberly is someone that we would go to for issues like policies, for example, disciplinary cases, making sure that procedurally we're following all the steps.
Okay. Has the district ever entertained, and I'm not advocating one way or another, I'm just curious if we've ever entertained looking into a different attorney for the district? And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Attorney Dupre also is the attorney for the town of Halifax, or am I mistaken about that?
I don't think he
No,
is.
he's
Yeah,
not.
Okay. Apologies.
And so we budgeted 19,500 for this year. So far, we spent 7,866. Was that your question?
I think I was just more curious about how, if we budgeted 19,000 and we only had $800 per month, that's not 19,000, but I think my question's been answered in that we have another attorney
Right.
the district uses, so.
Well, and the
thank you.
actual for 2022-23 was 28,664. So depending on the year and how much negotiations we're doing,
Right.
it all,
There was a decent amount of negotiations last year.
yes, there were. So,
Okay.
any other discussion? Okay, we can have a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. PAC draft, impossible, PAC,
I-
Pilgrim Area Collaborative.
I had asked that Karen include this draft because we had received it from the Plimpton School Committee representative to PAC, and so I wanted to make sure that Halifax had a copy as soon as possible, but I didn't know if our PAC representative had an update for this evening. This is a new agreement. It's been updated. It's in draft form. I'm asking the school committee to review it, and ultimately, each school committee would need to vote to approve it, and then the chair would sign it. So once you've had a chance to review and make a decision, then Karen could send it out to you as a signable PDF. But the committee would have to vote to approve it before you could sign off.
Okay. Is there a time limit, like if because I wasn't totally sure what to do with the
So is Karen Townsend
yeah.
the PAC representative? I can check with Karen to find out what they said was the deadline.
Because if we could just put it off till next month so we can have more, because it's a long
It says it goes into effect April 30th, 2024.
Okay, so I think
Our
we
next
have,
meeting's the first, right? Our next meeting's the first.
Yeah.
We don't
Yep.
know.
So it says Desi has asked PAC to have this process accomplished by April 30th, 2024. So it will take effect July 1st, 2024.
okay, so I think we can take more time to understand. and-
When's our
and-
next
what?
meeting scheduled?
I believe April 1st,
April
right?
first.
So we can put it on the agenda for next.
Yep.
All right, so we'll just add it to the agenda for next. Okay, and then the natural gas safety materials flyers, which I received that last month at the school committee meeting. So we couldn't talk about it because it wasn't on the agenda, so,
Even though this is educational materials, it is still considered an advertisement because Eversource appears throughout it. The school committee can grant permission for advertising commercial products or services in school buildings or on school property, according to KHB. I did not know if this is something you would want to make an exception for.
I feel like this is different than like advertising for, activities around town. And I mean, I'd be curious to see what the curriculum coordinator thinks of it because, it's, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but, because I don't know that it's, I mean, sure, it's an important subject, but I just don't know where it fits or, does that make sense?
Eversource has given out a lot of educational opportunities for teachers where they can go and attend for professional development. In addition to that, when they attend professional development, they will take the materials and work to implement their lessons. They're not, I wouldn't say that it's a unit or it's like a topic that they can do in the classroom. We've had some teachers throughout the district attend the PD and come back with them. We have some of the materials. I don't really, when I see the boxes, I can tell that they are Eversource, but I don't really see the name on them. So I think that it is something within Eversource as a requirement of an energy company in order to buy educational resources. So I would want to do a little bit more digging as to what is the reasoning behind why Eversource does this. I know some teachers have used them. We do not have them adopted as a curriculum resource. We are in the process of trying to transition to a new science curriculum in grades K to 6. So I, from my standpoint, wouldn't advocate for this year because I would say, let's work on this first, and then if we find that we have holes, we have issues, or we need resources in certain areas, then we may go look for something, and this might be something that would support that need, but not necessarily this time. Please come, I get these emails once a year
Okay.
with these resources. And earlier on my career, I had shared the PD days, but then based on teacher feedback, they're like, so I haven't as much. And also because of the transition, this year I try and kind of say, let's focus on this. Let's try and do this and do this.
And is it just something they want handed out or I don't even,
Yeah, and there's little packets they include too that actually smell like natural gas.
Oh.
So the students actually get to know what the scent is so that if they do smell it, they can report it.
I don't think it's a bad thing.
I'm not, I just,
Yeah, I
I don't.
I'm wondering if there's a way, because I agree that this is great information, especially for an emergency, but I'm wondering if it can be included when the fire department comes in and does their annual presentation in the classrooms, rather than us advertising a company. So just food for thought.
I mean, it only says Eversource 1, 2, 3 times. I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, there's so much gas cooking now, and middle schoolers, high schoolers really actually know the danger of it. Wouldn't be a horrible thing.
No, I don't have any issue with the content. I'm just curious about, like, are there educational resources that get this information? It looks like you have a concern about implementing it this year or using it this year. Is there something that we've done in the past in curriculum to talk about these things, or and, like, where would you put this? Is it something you do like in a assembly? Is it a safety, like part of science? Is it?
So
Maybe these are questions I shouldn't be, they're too in the weeds.
I think the reality is that this came to the school and it was asked that it would be sent out. I think was the request that went to Lauren. And it was sent to the school committee because it's considered an advertisement. I don't think anyone thinks that the information is dangerous or shouldn't be shared. I think that the teachers and the curriculum coordinator probably need time to figure out how and where it could fit in. So you could in fact vote to approve it, and then the school could decide how to disperse it and when.
I like that.
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
I'll second it.
We'll have a vote. Katie?
Yes.
Lori?
Yeah.
Jessica?
Yes.
I'm a no, actually, so, but that's okay. All right.
Just one question on it.
Yeah.
It's not, I have oil. What, out of all the Silver Lake towns, what is the gas company? Is it Eversource?
I don't know, I don't have
Yeah,
gas
I think
either.
it is. Yeah.
Or all the towns? Plimpton, Kingston, Halifax? But I know some of Halifax has gas. What, does anybody know? Anybody in the audience know?
lives in Kingston.
You are what? Eversource?
lives in Kingston, yes.
So does it, I mean, it's not like you really get to choose that anyway.
Yeah.
So like the advertisement of the name, it's really like, oh, well, I was gonna switch to National Grid, but it's like, you don't get that option. You don't even get to choose Comcast anymore. If you want internet, you have Comcast.
I think the town is the one that, the town administrators or selectmen are the
But
one
yeah, but
that-
we don't get to choose it, so
Correct.
it's like, it's not like it's like an advertisement, like, oh, well, if I didn't get that, I was gonna go
Well, no,
with
I'm not
National
worried
Grid.
about like, I don't, it's just more like, what are we, I don't know.
Setting a
It's-
precedent.
Yeah, exactly. But it's fine, I mean, it's, we already voted, so
So clarifying
we can move on. Oh, sorry, go
question.
ahead.
Sorry, if we've approved it at this point, does that mean the school has to use it? Or is it still at the discretion of the curriculum coordinator?
You approved the distribution. To what extent the school then uses it in the classroom will be up to the school.
Got it. Okay.
All right, and then the next item is cafeteria, kitchen equipment, and surplus items.
Yes. So in your packet, you'll see a memo from Megan Ehrenholtz, our food service director, and she has applied for and received a grant with the USDA for $6,258. That coupled with the Universal Free School Meals and their meal reimbursements, it's allowing her to purchase some new equipment, including 4 well-heated serving lines, 2 new cold serving lines, a new combination steamer/convection oven, a new tilt skillet, a new dishwasher, and a new double convection oven. The food service equipment that is currently in the HES kitchen is from 20 to 30 years old. We have 2 4-well serving lines, of which 2 of the 4 and 3 of the 4 wells respectively no longer heat up. Our convection oven cooks unevenly and sometimes stops working. There are no longer replacement parts available. Our steam jacketed kettle has also aged out of its usable life. Our combi oven frequently breaks down and there are no longer replacement parts. Our dishwasher leaks, and with the increased volume of trays, a new machine would greatly increase staff efficiency. She's asking that the school committee vote to declare the existing equipment, the 20 to 30-year-old equipment, be declared surplus, so in that she would have the delivery company remove and dispose of the existing equipment at no extra cost to Halifax.
So she's getting a grant for the new equipment, so it really doesn't affect us at all, other than we just get nice stuff. Okay.
Yes, but in order to get rid of the old stuff, the school committee must declare it surplus first.
Do we have to name each item, or can we say just the items in this letter?
As described in the memo.
As described in the memo. Any discussion or make a motion?
Well, it sounds like there's some safety concerns with them, so
No,
I don't think.
it seems like
Yeah.
the kind of like, you know, you
Seems like
get
a-
new stuff, they get rid of it for you. That's
Yeah.
great. I certainly don't want to arrange to get rid of it.
I'll make a motion to approve this with all items listed in the memo.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye, yes, okay. All right, and then the next topic is the advertising on school grounds in reference to the 100 days sign last month. Can you just tell us more about how that came to be?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So every year we've had signage that's been put out, and we work with our PTO, people that have put it out there. There's a new person that was doing it this year and wasn't aware of the QR sign. We've never had the QR sign there before, so that was something that was put out there mistakenly.
Okay. I thought the sign was really nice, honestly. It was just the QR code that was questionable, so you didn't see it all during the day?
That was just, this is someone new. It's not the same person that's done it for the last several years.
I know, I was just asking, did you see the QR code during the day?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right.
All right. I was just wondering, because would you have taken it down, or felt comfortable taking it down, or contacting someone, or just because I feel like the QR code does go against policy?
Well, that's what we did do to try and figure out how it came out, like why it was out there, because it's not something that we've ever done previously, so we had to figure out who put it up and why, so. It was a mistake.
Oh, I know.
They put up another sign recently, a couple weeks afterwards, and the QR sign wasn't up there, so.
Okay. Yeah, just, because, I don't know if there's anything to vote on, but just, in the future, I would feel like if there's a situation like that, is it considered okay for you to, take the sign down? Because I just don't want other companies to think that because, not take the whole sign down, just the QR codes. Is that,
Absolutely. We can look at that.
How
okay.
long was the sign up?
Just one day.
But start to, beginning to close or?
I think they must have put it up after hours the previous night and then taken it down.
Yeah, I was down the next morning when I drove to school, so. All right. I'm not sure if there's anything to vote on, just.
Good eye on it. Honestly, I saw the QR code and didn't think anything of it, so good eye on that one. So I was just like, oh, okay.
Well, it's just, we
I
don't
didn't
want,
think of it
because
as
you don't want
advertisement,
one
but it
person to
is.
come up and say, I'm donating this to the school, now can you?
It should have.
Help me
Yeah.
out, yeah. But I didn't
Okay.
even think about it until you brought it. I was like, oh wow, that is advertisement. It's just like a cool sign.
Yeah, no, the sign itself was
It was.
awesome.
I didn't think about that, so good. Yeah.
All right. Okay, well, I don't think there's really anything to vote on. I just wanted to find out what happened with it, basically. So, unless you differ? Okay. All right, so we're approval of bill schedule and,
So I have brought with me tonight 7 warrants totaling $239,830.84 to be signed and then delivered to Town Hall in the morning.
okay. We're working on those. Okay. All right, and then I don't have any correspondence and reports, except Karen did send an email about the 6th grade event today, Karen Townsend, because she was able to attend, which I was disappointed I couldn't.
If I could just say, I am so honored to be invited to it.
Me too.
I wish I could have been there as well. But I want to thank the 6th grade teachers for making that invitation to us, because that was very kind.
And actually, Miss Parker just sent me pictures, which was great, because I unfortunately had to be in my office today, so I couldn't make it either, but I thought it sounded like a wonderful program, and I was excited to be invited too. So, but Karen said it was, Karen Townsend said, let me see. She said that she was impressed by the work of the student. And they were the students were, she talked to several groups of students. They were knowledgeable, professional, and passionate about their research. Thank you again for the teachers for the invitation and all their efforts in putting the event on together. So I thought that was great too, and I hope that we can be invited to future events like that as a school committee. And it really sounded wonderful, and I'm excited to look at the pictures after the meeting. So anyway, all right. Other than that, we don't have new business. Any new business to add for the agenda next time, or? Nope, okay. So we'll go to subcommittees, policy.
We haven't met.
Okay, negotiations, we did not meet.
No, it was canceled
It was
because of the
canceled.
weather.
Right. Pilgrim. I was so anyway. Dang weather, anyway.
That didn't even end up being as bad as it was supposed to.
I know, it's the whole thing. Pilgrim Area Collaborative, which Karen's not here. Youth and Rec.
The only thing new to report is the big Easter egg hunt is coming up on the 23rd, and Mr. Steele is excited about it.
Great.
Nice.
PTO, that's Karen. Capital budget, didn't meet. Admin review.
Yes, we met prior to the joint school committee meeting to discuss the shared cost contracts, and we did not vote the shared cost contract changes at the joint meeting.
Okay.
So no decision was made, and that was February 15th.
DEIB subcommittee.
So Cameron and I were able to meet to discuss kind of what our first steps are. One of the things that we talked about was looking, I think we talked about this the last meeting, was looking at the existing school policies to see, if we felt like there were any gaps or if they were sufficient. So we are kind of dividing and conquering that work. But we did have a few questions that came up that we wanted to bring up in the to the group today to see if we could get some clarification. So I want to say it was our October meeting. Karen had brought, and it's in our meeting documents, a snapshot from a Massachusetts Association of School Committees handbook that had talked about creating the DEI coordinator, that every school should have a DEI coordinator role. So we're wondering if, Ryan, I know that you have responsibilities in that space. We're wondering if it would be something that you could provide kind of like a written description of what your purview is and how, what your responsibilities are for DEI in the district, if that makes sense, just so that we understand what your role is, specifically probably to Halifax, but I think you probably assume that role in the district, if that makes sense. Okay.
Sure.
So that's one, if we could get that from you. And then, so a question also came up that, if we, kind of a matter of what is the process. So we have school policies and district policies. If a school district policy is violated, how does that interact with the student handbook in terms of like policy violations? Like, the understanding I think we both have is that we have school policies which give our school community rights, protections while they're in the space of the school. If a violation happens, like, is there corrective action? Where does that fall in the spectrum of?
It depends on what is revealed through the investigation.
Okay.
So if it's, if bullying is alleged, the anti-bullying protocol investigation procedure is followed. If harassment is alleged, it might include the Title IX investigative paperwork and procedures that could be offered depending upon the issue. If someone is violating the code of conduct, that would be outlined in the school handbook in terms of, and I think probably more detailed in something like a high school handbook than it is in an elementary handbook, not just Halifax, but generally speaking. But anything could range from, having a conversation with the student's parents. It could be, an in-school suspension. It could be an out-of-school suspension, depending upon how serious the issue was. Certain types of issues have to be reported to DCF.
Yeah.
So it all depends on what is substantiated during the investigation, what specific steps are taken, and why.
Okay, because that was one thing that felt like it was unclear as we were looking at some of the policies, like it outlined the policy, but not necessarily what the corrective measure would be if there was a violation.
It depends on what is revealed, and that's usually something, especially in issues, serious matters, might be something that we would ask the attorney to review to make sure that we had followed all of the necessary protocols based upon what was or was not substantiated.
Okay, that's helpful. And then just one last question. I'm hoping this is something that we can receive. Does the administration have data that shows where we are or are not meeting the needs of all students, or that we are not meeting the needs of all students in terms of like test scores or other things for like our minority students groups versus non-minority student groups? Do we have that breakdown of data?
The state has that breakdown of data. You can find that on the state's profiles page.
Specific to our district? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to meet again. Karen apologizes, she was really disappointed that she couldn't be here. But we're gonna meet again and have a bigger update for next month.
Great, thanks. Then Union 31, we had a meeting, was it February 15th also? There's so many meetings. And we discussed a lot, but about the budget, but we didn't vote on any.
No, there were too many
Yeah.
questions.
Right, which we're probably going to discuss more. We are going to discuss more about the budget tonight. Okay, so we'll move on to our principal's report. Mr. Boudry?
Right, thank you. School council met on February 28th. That meeting, again, was focused on handbook revisions. It continues to be our main focus so that we can have a draft proposal for you all for our next meeting on April 1st. So we'll send that over to you guys once.
Great.
And then we'll send it over to you before April 1st so you can have an idea. And we'll have the draft of the changes and what the new version will look like. And our next meeting is March 27th, of course. And the water issue. We just sent the notice out today. We've been doing like monthly updates. So this was the third round of testing that we had. We did find that there were still elevated areas in the building. That was even after we've done the flushing that we've been doing. Bob Clancy, our head custodian, and Scott Turner, who's here today, and he's been helping us out with flushing the system every day, starting at like 5:30 and earlier. But I think Scott's been doing a great job. So, but he goes through the building and flushing the system on a daily basis. That has shown that it does reduce the levels, but still with those areas where they were continued to be elevated, what the Sari and the water company, they had advised us to start looking at the actual fixtures. So we've started replacing any fixtures that were still showing that they were elevated.
How many fixtures have you replaced?
At this point, I think there's 2 that we've replaced. And we've
It
done-
seems like the flushing, if I'm understanding correctly though, the flushing has been pretty effective at mitigating the levels though. Is that?
It seems like
Okay.
that's the case. But again, the numbers seem to be a little bit all over the place. So I think the more we continue to test, and we'll find out more information about whether or not it's in the fixtures or the pipes or the main coming in.
And the fixtures were the 2 that were the main issue, or, sorry, it's just a lot to keep straight.
So the areas that were still elevated after the flushing, those were the fixtures that we
Okay,
we had
and there were
replaced.
only 2 really that were,
Of the
okay.
ones that we had tested.
Oh, right, because you only test a few of them at a time.
When you say fixtures, can you define that for me? Because I'm not a plumber, so.
Neither am I, but I mean, just my understanding is just the faucet itself.
So the on-off switch in the faucet where the water is running out of?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my understanding of it. So, and we'll see if that helps with reducing the lead
When is
levels.
the next time they're going to be checking again?
I'm not sure, but I will find out.
Okay.
So it sounds like there's improvement, which is great.
There
But
is-
we're still using bottled water, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I read the email, but I kind of skimmed it, but,
We still do, and then we also put a filter on the steam oven in the kitchen to see if that will also help in the process. But I think there's more areas that we can put filters in the kitchen. But right now, we're still using bottled water.
Okay.
If there's anything in the kitchen.
They also recommended filters for our water filling stations, because the water filling stations with the water filter detected no lead.
wow,
Oh.
that's great. Well, it's exciting that hopefully these measures will correct it and it won't be a huge, yeah.
So in our capital budget, just kind of jumping ahead, there is something about bathrooms updating. So the fixtures that we're updating now, is that also the same thing? Are we doubling up here, or is that separate?
Totally separate.
Okay.
So I'll find out when the next round of testing is.
Okay.
I believe that Mike was waiting until the fixtures had been put in and the steamer filter had been put in before he scheduled a date, because they wanted to see if it
Change.
had an impact.
So are we doing our own testing or is that private special
Yeah.
company? It's still that
Sarah.
company, okay, it's still the company that specializes, okay. Just curious about that, okay.
That's all that I have.
Okay, great, thank you. Sarah? Your turn.
Thank you. My computer is still saying reconnecting, but I can read what is on here. There is a deficit in the professional development line, which is tuition reimbursement. The budget for FY25 takes this into consideration. There's a deficit in the tech hardware line, which is absorbed within the category. There's a deficit in special education contracted services, which is OTPT, and we learned today that there's a deficit in special education tuition and transportation, which is not reflected on this report, of about $300,000. The special education department is in the process of applying for extraordinary relief. Extraordinary relief claims are due this Friday.
Okay. With now be, well, I guess we're gonna have a budget discussion, which I guess maybe I should save my questions for then, or, okay, I'll save them for then. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Brian?
Thank you. So under my items, we have 2 pieces. The first is just an update on some professional development last week. So last week, one of our goals in the strategy for district improvement is to develop a data dashboard that would help give teachers and school leaders better information about student performance, a little bit like Lori just talked about, with broken down by sort of like demographics, how students have achieved in the past report cards and things like that. So we had 4 staff from Halifax, including of course, Melissa Farrell, the curriculum coordinator, but also Mr. Beaudry, Lori Heaney, Jody Smith, and Allie Hodges all participated. I think it was a very good start to helping make data more accessible to our teachers and interventionists, and it takes a long time to get STAR data, DIBELS data, MCAS data, and other key pieces of information in there. So we appreciate that for Dave Murphy and Melissa Farrell to help coordinate that. And I'm optimistic that we can get our customized data dashboard into a place where teachers can have it operational for the 24-25 school year. So I just want to thank the teachers for attending, and Melissa for her work, and Dave Murphy, and for Kane for being there, and Brian for a little bit as well. So that was last week on the 27th.
I have a question.
28th. Sure.
Will you also be putting SST goals and data that you're doing to track a student prior to a team meeting?
Yeah, that's
Will
really,
that all be there so that as the child goes from one grade level to the next, that data follows them?
it's a really good question. Thank you. So the group that attended the training also, 3 of those members are also part of the district MTSS steering committee. So we're thinking about ways to ensure that before any child would come before sort of a special education team meeting, that we would use a system to track interventions and whether or not students are making progress. So we know our platform can do that. Our question I think as a leadership group is, when does it make the most sense to roll that out? And certainly we just can't turn it on in the middle of the year as teachers are gearing up for MCAS and things like that. So not that you were saying that, but we're trying to be really thoughtful about first giving teachers easy access to the data that's in there, like past report cards, benchmarking data, and then maybe starting small with our reading specialists who also attended, to have them think about the easiest way to use that with students. But we're still developing that, and
I think it's
that would be a
important to
hope.
have that
Yeah.
seamless transition, because if a teacher started to do some interventions and they're finding that they do or don't work, the next teacher that takes on that student shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel and start all of those strategies all over again to see if interventions are or are not working. So I think we could be losing some learning time for that child if we're not tracking it properly.
Sure. And right now there are paper-based systems for that and some Google Sheets. So just want to reassure you that that data is being transferred. Where since the training was just last week, we're thinking about ways to introduce it to teachers so it's manageable, and I think we have to start it with a small group to ensure, to see how much, how to make it efficient and effective. But that's the goal, is for there to be a place where you don't have to walk to the office and find the CUME file to find, and that's just how schools work. We want to make it easier, especially since students do so much assessment work online and there are so many different platforms, that we just want to make it easy for teachers and effective for kids and parents. So that's where we're starting, and I appreciate, to be out for 2 days takes a lot of work, as you know, for teachers. So thank you to the teachers who put the work in to attend and also make sure their students have things to do. So that was an update on the EduClimb and professional development. And Melissa Farrell has joined us to respond to the request about handwriting. So she put together a handout that's inside of your folder. So Melissa, if you'd like to take us through that, that would be great.
So I just linked some resources here and outlined some of the Massachusetts frameworks that are connected with handwriting. So there is a link there to the handwriting practice book that's used for kindergarten. There's also a link there to, we had some concerns originally on when we were looking at our scoping sequence for handwriting and the pace of it. So we adapted and modified it after the first year of adopting the being a reader curriculum. So there's a link there that sort of shows how that's been consolidated so that it happens faster. Kids are exposed to the letter formations a little faster. There's also the first grade review book is linked there that is used. I put in there about the occupational therapy cards. So we know that part of handwriting starts in kindergarten, which is hand strength, and building up hand strength. So there are 4 cards that rotate between the 4 kindergarten classrooms that have, each drawer has a series of activities that kids do. So that is, although it doesn't seem like handwriting, it actually is a really integrated part of the handwriting support. I did go around and talk to kindergarten teachers to sort of get an idea of what they're doing and get an estimate. They're like, I guess it's 20 minutes a day, but they were like, some days it's longer, and some days there's a review, and some days there's a center. So I put that number in there, but there's an approximate sign there, because it's really hard to sort of like commit to that. That's at a minimum, but anytime a kid is writing or drawing pictures, that is all connected to handwriting in the kindergarten years. Where then in first grade, it's really a review at the beginning of the year, going over sort of the formation of the letters. And then in grade 2, there is no official kindergarten or type of instruction in handwriting. It would be reviewed from the teachers. And part of that comes from this idea of just consistent letter formation. So letters start at the top, so the kindergarten teachers were showing me the use of an app that they use. There's a picture of it in the photos from the classroom resources. That reinforces that and sort of shows the kids the directions, and they use that for practice. So there's a picture of an OT card, there's some of the drawing, the coloring, the practicing. One of the things that, if you remember the days of the Palmer method, I'm doing this. These are all the skills that sort of go into handwriting. And then some first grade practices in there. And then in second grade, when I went and did talk to the teachers there, they will practice it if they see that a kid is struggling and give them review sheets on handwriting. But that's specific to the question that you had asked around sort of key to 2. And then I outlined sort of in the bottom there sort of how handwriting looks like through 3rd grade. Because it is in 3rd grade that we do start to see the introduction of cursive writing. But the state has been very sort of vocal about the expectations for cursive handwriting so that students have signature. And that is the outcome of it, which is very different than how I went to school.
I've just noticed, it was me that brought it up to you, obviously. I have 2 kids in their kindergarten and 2nd grade, and I've noticed that I feel like both of them are not knowing that, like, there's like the basement letters and the letters that go into they can't figure that out, and it's really hard because when they're learning it at school one way, now I have to break that habit. You know what I mean? Like I just looked at this first grade book that you send out, or is sent out, and I have this at home. I got it at the end of the year and it's empty. Like it wasn't used, and that was my concern. So then I was like, okay, I'm not one to be like, oh, my child is perfect and whatever he's doing is what needs to be done. I'm far from that person. But so I did put out a poll asking some other parents the same thing, and one of them was actually told, well, I was told not to worry about it because everything's on a computer, and now it's part of his, or there, I don't know if it was a girl or a boy. I'm not saying you did it. I'm not saying, I don't know who said it. I don't know the truth behind it. I don't think so either. I'm just saying that they were like, oh, well, now it's part of their, like, special plan they have at the school is to work on handwriting too. And I'm like, I just feel like that is such a fun, like, if you don't have, sure, everything's moving to technology. I get it. I completely get it. I'm against it. I don't love that. I feel like it's blue light, it's bad for your face, it's bad for all the things. I don't want my kids staring at a screen all the time. I find them at home. But if they can't write properly, in my opinion, it's almost like they're illiterate. I just feel like more time needs to be spent on handwriting and making sure that the letters are formed properly, because how are you going to form a Y properly in cursive if you can't write it, like, if it's not going to go into the basement? Like, it's already hard enough. The English language is already hard enough, and then to learn how to write it, and then for the parents to have to break it. And I was talking to teachers as well, and they were like, oh, you should join school committee. I'm like, funny thing about that is, I'm like, I'll try, but here I am. I just think that it's a basic thing. Same thing with numbers. Like my son makes his 4s a line and it goes like this. I'm like, well, how are you gonna write 1, 2, 3, 4? And then there's not enough space. You just completely messed it all up. So then I'm breaking habits. I just feel like more needs to be, I don't think it's even kindergarten. I think more maybe first grade is where it needs to be really pushed. And I was talking to a second grade teacher that said that she agrees with the same thing. I'm scared we're like cheating our children by moving them too fast past these basic skills. And then, I don't know, maybe it's just me. Like I said, I have a kindergartner and a second grade. Maybe it's just me. I just think that more time needs to be spent on this. I'm spending hundreds of dollars on handwriting books at my house to try and break these habits. And I feel like I'm now exhausted as a mom who has to work. My husband works. I totally get it. Everybody works. But now I'm breaking habits of something that I feel like should be taught at school because it's a basic skill. That's why I brought it up. And I'm not saying you're not doing your job because this looks exactly how I would want it to be done. It just maybe it's execution, maybe it's just my kids, I'm not sure. But I have heard from a few other moms the same thing, and not even just in Halifax. Bridgewater moms are saying the same thing. I have some friends in other districts with the same age kids, they're saying all the same thing. So, and they're also tired trying to break old habits. So that's just my thought. I don't know if there's any way to move around it. I don't know if this is just me sitting on school committee crying and like it doesn't make a Y properly, but just figured.
I'll give you, like, feel better, like, 3 of my kids in college are doing fine, even if they're
But I'm not saying
No,
need,
no,
but it's proper
yeah,
formation
like-
of it. Like, I don't like.
I'm just
You
saying,
know?
like, from a perspective of they've been through the whole system, you know, like.
Yeah, I get it, I
understand
get
where
it.
you're coming from.
But,
you know,
but your
and-
kids are even older at this point too. I feel like it's even moving faster
I
from.
don't know.
Well, I can say when my 2 kids were at HES, this probably was the same curriculum at the time. And yeah, I mean, their signatures are not as pretty as mine, or my mom's for that matter. And mine isn't as pretty as my mom's, but, you know, the focus was more on their signature. But there was a teacher here who's now retired that used to spend extra time. I think he called it disco handwriting. And the kids loved it. And it was, you know, but he took that initiative. If we're trying to work within what are the requirements of education and fit it all in, I completely hear what you're saying. I wish my kids had better handwriting.
I just think it's
Well,
like
I wasn't
it's the
trying to dismiss
formation
it,
in my
like-
mind. I think we're moving too fast past these little kids' ages where they're learning their fundamentals of how to write numbers, letters, and they're just like, oh, spell this. And it's like, well, they don't know how to spell it. Now they definitely can't write it because they don't know how to make a Y or that the G goes low. So then their G looks like a 9, and then I don't know what's happening in the homework anymore because I'm like, your letters are your numbers and your numbers are backwards, and year 7. So it's frustrating as a mom, and I'm just voicing from other moms the same thing. That's why I'm here. That's why I ran for this, to voice from other parents to protect our children, to make it all come together nicely. But if it's something that we can't do, I get it. I will continue to spend hundreds on books and make sure that they're writing them correctly. But I just feel like this is something that we're kind of cheating our children by not teaching them how to form letters correctly. I don't actually think it's your problem. I think it's more of like a where we put it so that it's maybe more time is spent. I don't actually think it's kindergarten. I think it's more of the first grade because the kindergarten is, I don't know. Like you said, they're learning how to use their hand at this point, not even.
I do think, Jess, that it is expectations throughout. So I mean, we do sometimes even see 4th, 5th, or 6th graders not capitalizing,
Yeah.
words or proper punctuation. So I think it is kind of a list. Brian and I have talked with staff about like non-negotiables at each grade level. Like
Yeah.
what should a first grader be able to do so that when they get to 2nd grade, they can build upon that and not go back and say,
And break old habits.
like,
Yeah.
how do you capitalize the first letter of a sentence, or where do certain letters, formations, how is the spacing happening?
Yeah, like how to- like how to-
words? So there are things there.
Properly write it. Like my son's also, he's good left and ambidextrous, so he can be confused and make it wrong, but my other son is not. So I'm like, okay, now I'm watching you do it, so I was basing it off of him and then some other people like I was talking about. And I actually texted somebody and I was like, hey, just, can you watch your kid write this letter and just tell me? And she's like, oh, he did it backwards. I'm like, now I'm annoyed, it's not just me. So I just, like I said, I just feel like we're cheating our kids in like early ages by not teaching them how to write, because if you become a 14-year-old, 15, 16, our age, you can't write a letter correctly, where are you going in life here? It's such a basic thing that I just think needs to be really focused, in my opinion. I don't know.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly.
I'm already kind of bummed we don't do cursive just because, like, now my kids, if you can't write cursive, you probably can't read cursive, and then how are you gonna read my aunt's love letter to her husband from the 60s? And it's like, well, damn, you're never gonna, that's hard. So you know that it ends. It's like we're killing generations of being able to read letters and scripts from certain things. I already don't love that, but that is what it is. I mean, get rid of the cursive, fine, but I think they need to form letters correctly, numbers correctly, write them the right way. And I think your curriculum actually fits it I think what you're doing is right. I think it's the execution, like what Kane said.
Well, and the only thing that I would share with you is that I think this is where like my job can come into play too, is that if you're a parent who wants resources or ways to support kids at home, you don't need to be spending money for that. We have access to that
Yeah.
to be able to provide that for families. And I think the classroom teachers have access to that to provide those supports. It's something that we have in the past year pushed all of our kindergarten teachers and almost all of our first grade teachers through a phonics handwriting-based sequence to review and create some consistencies with expectations. I brought the kindergarten manual, she brought the first grade one.
I appreciate you coming too, by the way, thank you.
But I think it's something that I think kindergarten teachers are very passionate about it and about the pieces of it and working on it. I think that this is a great conversation to revisit and just think about how are we reinforcing it in first grade and are we giving it enough time. And so I think it's always, feedback is fantastic and it makes us reflect and it makes us think. And so, I might have all of this great stuff written on paper, but it's a great opportunity to think about it because there's a lot of interesting science too around handwriting and kids and development.
Yeah.
I can tell you my child was able to write mirror image. Like you could literally hold it up to the mirror and read it perfectly.
Left hand
She
versus right
doesn't do
hand or
that
something.
anymore, thank goodness. But I agree with you. I know as an educator, I'm seeing things like capitalization in the middle of a word, the spacing like you mentioned.
Yeah. Well,
And it just takes
grammar
time
will change
for-
an entire sentence.
Yeah, it just
There's
takes
a lot of
time
things in
and
there.
reinforcement, so.
Mhm.
And I think it would be valuable, maybe as a staff meeting, to have grade level to grade level, say, this is the expectation when they enter first grade, so the kindergarten teachers know what the first grade teachers are expecting to see from their students. And then same, second grade, when they leave first grade, what are we expecting them to be able to do? And making sure that we're hitting those milestones so that we're not backtracking.
Anything else?
No, I think I said enough.
No, it's fine, and I just meant from the perspective of, I know you worry a lot
Yeah.
a little, but it comes out.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know, it's just a basic thing that maybe it's because I'm weird about my own handwriting and then who's gonna, grammar's next if they're messing up with their letter form, they mess with their grammar and then that creates a lot of problems when all kids do is text, so it could be an issue.
A whole new language, anyway. Jill? Thanks.
All right, we are going to present version 3 of the Halifax budget. In your packet, you will see that Sarah has created version 3 with going back to 2020 actuals all the way up to year-to-date FY24 actuals and then the 2024-25 proposed along with percent differences. Before we look at that, we want to give you a summary of where we are since the last time we met. So we want to just review a few things with you because we're hopeful that that might help with going through the Halifax budget as well. So please recall a number of changes that have been made. Pre-K, the regional agreement, pre-K was absorbed, officially recognized in the Silver Lake Agreement. For decades prior to this change, pre-K and a number of special education programs were being treated as if they were Silver Lake. That can no longer continue. DESI gave us until June of this year. Silver Lake positions in elementary schools will need to transition over to elementary budgets, and we went over that. What we found out in our conversations with DESI, not because of the regional agreement, this is not the impact of the changes made to the regional agreement. This also is something that should have been done for decades. Out-of-district special education tuitions for pre-K and secondary should have been charged to Silver Lake and then assessed to the towns. The way that we have been doing it for decades is that each elementary district paid the out-of-district tuitions for their secondary students. We had two legal opinions on this. Both legal opinions agreed with DESI that that is how it should have been done for decades. Extended school year is going to show up in your budget now because as we move these Silver Lake programs out of the elementary schools, we don't necessarily have revolving accounts. We'll still have a revolving account for pre-K because we have typical peers that we tuition in. But we don't have revolving accounts specifically for special education extended school year. So in your Halifax budget, you'll see for the first time those extended school year numbers, estimates on students who qualify for extended school year services this summer.
So, sorry, can I ask a quick question about that? So before, what extended school year wasn't really on the budget at all and was funded by a revolving account? Or where was it like in the budget?
So in the budget, it would have appeared through, I believe, through your tuitions line. That's where you would have
Like
been
an
charged.
out-of-district tuition type? Okay,
That's where you would have been charged.
okay.
And you're seeing a decrease, but
We're seeing an
now you're
increase
seeing
in our
an increase
assessment.
in your
Assessment.
extended school year, and you're seeing an increase in your assessment.
Okay.
In terms of shared cost positions, those are going to be, according to the agreement, as they should have been. Go ahead.
How come we don't have the grant anymore?
We do.
Oh, we do?
We have the
Oh,
grants.
We have the grants, but you
Yep.
can't use them
Nope.
the way we were using them. Okay. All right. No, I'm just like, it's a lot to wrap your head around. Like, you know, I'm sorry, I'm not trying not to get ahead. Maybe
I'm
I just
trying not to
listen.
panic people.
Okay.
We don't have the grants anymore.
Okay, well, that's, it's just you can't use them how we're using them. Okay.
We're not going to use, we are going to offset our tuitions with the, we're still getting the same amount of money in the grants, if not perhaps more. It depends on what you qualify for. So what we did in our estimate is that 5 paras and 0.5, $182,000 is used to be paid for with the grant. We're going to use $182,000 to offset tuitions. It's just a different line being offset.
And that's out of district tuitions because it's not the assessment.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The exact figure may change. We think that it might go up, but we can't say for sure because we don't have our actual numbers yet. So, and again, it's not because we can't use the grant for staffing. It's just that in this overly complicated system, why would we want to track individuals as grant funded? Why not just reduce the tuition line and use more of our grant money in the way that it was intended to be, which is student services?
Well, and we shouldn't really be funding positions with grants because as a practice,
Yeah.
it's not good.
But it's not because we're not allowed to.
Okay, got it. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that.
Okay, so we're gonna move ahead. Circuit breaker, I'm gonna turn this over to Sarah to talk about circuit breaker this year and next year, but if I may steal the thunder, the reality is that next year, FY '26, Silver Lake will be reimbursed for Halifax pre-K students and Halifax out-of-district students at the secondary level. Whereas this upcoming year, Halifax gets to take all of its circuit breaker money and apply it just to the elementary school.
So we'll be spreading it thinner FY '26 because we have to, or I'll just let you talk.
But your amounts are so small
Okay,
now that so much has gone to Silver Lake that it's
Okay.
less of it. You're gonna get everything that Halifax is entitled to. It's just some of the Silver Lake will be entitled to some of that money in FY '26, and Halifax will be entitled to some of that money in FY '26. It's not going to be the same amounts that you've always received because you're not paying for as much in the Halifax budget.
because we're not paying the tuitions, we're paying the assessment.
Well, you're paying some, but you're not paying for pre-K
Right,
and
right, that's what I
secondary.
meant, yeah.
Mhm.
I need to use all the words, sorry. Go ahead.
So essentially, I wrote paragraphs here. Essentially, circuit breaker is a reimbursement for costs that are paid for by the town. So in FY '24, this current year, Halifax is paying tuitions for students pre-K to 12 plus. So the circuit breaker reimbursement, which will be filed for in July and received next year, will be all Halifax's based on what was spent this year. The next year, as Jill said, some of the tuition will be paid by Halifax for students K to 6. Some of the tuition will be paid by Silver Lake through the assessment process for pre-K students and 7 through 12 plus. So in the circuit breaker filing in the summer of 2025, the money that is then reimbursed through circuit breaker will be a portion to Halifax and a portion to Silver Lake.
Got it.
Next slide. So, what is going to Silver Lake that has been removed from the Halifax budget? Halifax is responsible for 32.5% of the cost of pre-K, which is $868,142, that you do not see in your Halifax elementary school budget this year. Out-of-district costs that you do not see in your Halifax elementary school budget is $1,662,914 for grades 7 through 12 plus, and $299,264 for transportation, grades 7 through 12 plus. But before we're going to talk about a number of things before we talk about the total bottom line and where we stand. Sarah made a number of changes to this version.
So in moving from the version 2 budget, in reviewing it as part of the overall analysis of where Silver Lake, all 4 entities was, we found some pre-K out-of-district tuitions in the Halifax budget. So those were removed from the Halifax budget. There were some adjustments for special ed transportation, so that was also a decrease in the Halifax budget. The special education tuitions were adjusted. There were about 14 different lines that changed, and it was, up 56,000, down 49,000, up 40, and all told, those changes came to a reduction of $609. We allocated additional 240 funds, so we analyzed the historical 240 grant payments, and we allocated an additional $37,205 in the version 3 budget. The other thing I did, which has no change on the overall number, but if you recall, there is a special ed tuition line that I'm going to refer to as a generic tuition line, where I put the costs for the extended school year, and I had the costs for the extended school year and the offset for circuit breaker and the offset for the 240 grant all in the same line. And I found that as I was explaining it to school committee, because there's a lot of you, it was confusing. So I created a separate line just called tuition offsets. And the circuit breaker and the 240 grant are in that line.
Next slide, please. So our circuit breaker estimate is $605,000 and the offset has been taken. So we've already reduced the Halifax Elementary School budget by $605,000. Regular day includes all of the services that occur in this building. So it includes some special education services. Regular day is a 15% increase of $937,694. Regular day reflects the DLC program staffing, 240 grant positions that we moved in, revolving account staff that were moved into the budget, along with all of the other increases that you see highlighted and listed on your budget there. Special education tuition and transportation, K through 6, is a 101% decrease of $2,781,192. Substitutes and utilities were updated. The total budget is a 20% decrease of $1,843,499. That's including the principal's requests. So this is no longer a level services budget. The reason why I'm emphasizing that to you right now is because although Halifax is a distinct district and budget, it is intertwined with the Silver Lake budget, and that Halifax students also attend Silver Lake Regional School. So while we may see this 20% decrease as a sign of no problem, the reality is that the Silver Lake budget is going up. And so we met today with the town administrator and the head of the finance committee and Sandy Nolan today to review the budget. And they expressed concerns about their ability to pay for the total amount of increases. And we're going to be asking you to begin thinking about if we need to make budget cuts to meet that need. That those cuts need to come not only from Silver Lake. So we have one school that's going beyond level services, and we have another school district where schools are struggling to just meet level services with the percent increases. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through this budget process as well. I know it's hard to do because you're responsible for Halifax Elementary, but the Halifax Elementary plus the Silver Lake assessments has an impact on the town of Halifax that services all Halifax children. Next slide, please.
Sorry, and something that concerns me is the regular day 15% increase. Because that is Halifax only, even though we have a total 20% decrease overall, I'm still concerned about the regular day having a 15% increase. And I do recognize some of that is from bringing like the paras in, right? That's from, and adding them to the budget. So those are things that we really need to be aware of as we think about the budget, that our regular day is going up because of how, so even though the overall kind of looks good, we don't have our assessment yet, and the total cost to town is a problem right now. So that's where, so
And this is also the additional request made
Right.
by the school last time. So that's
Right.
part of that 15% as well.
Part of that, yeah. So, I mean, I can like, the 15% increase is a lot considering, you know, that's just a lot for a regular day increase, which I know it is shifting of some things around, but still. Anyway, all right, we can keep going.
So in our very first budget presentation, you saw how some line items were going up, others went down to address needs, and we highlighted that. We still only have one known retirement for FY25, and at this time, we have currently one student in out-of-district vocational, and we're notified of at least one more moving in. We won't have this exact number until April 1st. There is some wiggle room in this line, but again, we won't know the exact number until April 1st.
So we'll know at the meeting on April 1st, or do we have to wait until May to find out? Or can that be put on the meeting to find out if that, like, you know what I'm asking?
In theory, yes,
Okay.
as long as that information gets to us on time.
Okay.
We'll put a special note to check in before we come to this meeting. Okay, next item. So the shared costs are in there, but any changes to shared cost contracts are not necessarily reflected in this budget. Potential enrollment increases that are unforeseen, we don't know. And we also don't know, but what we do know this time is we have received word that we're eligible for $40,551. So we have not taken that amount. We haven't gotten the REAP grant yet, but in theory, the REAP grant would help us in terms of the technology hardware line. Next slide. So why are we doing this? So in 22-23, actually before 22-23, 21, it became apparent that Silver Lake Elementary programs, there was no such thing. And so we began having meetings with the Department of Education and the chairs, talking about what we could do to fix this issue. In the fall, the school committees voted, the school committees and the towns voted to approve pre-K moving into Silver Lake. And Desi told us we had to make the rest of the changes by June of this year. In addition, we knew these changes were coming, so in 22-23, we began more fully utilizing our financial software by, in particular, developing a centralized HR database, making sure that we are correctly funding stipend positions, particularly at the Silver Lake level, for example. In 23-24, we began addressing Silver Lake configuration and correcting financial structural issues, primarily Silver Lake Elementary shared cost agreements and out-of-district secondary, which we've all highlighted. We are required to fix these things by the Department of Education and state regulations. These are things that we have been doing for a very long time, that we have been given until the end of this year to fix. So Sarah created assessments based on the version 4 of the Silver Lake budget, and she's going to go through that with you now so you can see where the concern arises with regards to the impact on Halifax in the Silver Lake assessments.
So this is the version 2 assessment calculations that's based on the version 4 Silver Lake budget and the version 3 Halifax and Kingston budget and the version 2 Plimpton budget.
Say that again.
And so everything's up there for you to see, but I'm going to go through the Halifax line. So the assessment to Halifax in FY24 was $5,582,257.46. The estimated assessment for the current Silver Lake budget for Halifax for this year is $8,918,067.93. That is a $3,335,810.47 increase, or a 59.8% change for Halifax. This next slide is the Halifax budget. So this is the Halifax version 3 budget that we'll be talking about tonight. So FY24, the Halifax budget was $9,276,151.61. The FY25 budget that we'll be talking about tonight is $7,432,653.38. So there is a $1,843,498.29 decrease, or a 19.9% decrease in the Halifax operating budget. When I was putting together all of the information for all of the budgets for the 4 entities, I thought it was very important to look at the overall picture for each town. So this next slide has what I'm referring to as the overall cost of education. So that gives along the Halifax row, that is the Halifax operating budget plus the Halifax assessment currently, which overall from FY24 to FY25 would be a $1,492,312.18 increase for the town of Halifax.
And in today's meeting, one of the things they talked about was only being able to afford an increase overall, if I'm correct, by $1 million. So we're looking at a $492,000 decrease, or even greater, in order for it to impact the assessments.
Cody was mentioning only being able to afford a $1 million increase, which would mean we would need a $3 million decrease to Silver Lake in order to have a $1 million decrease to Halifax at the 30.5%.
And how much would we decrease from the Halifax budget as well? Because obviously it wouldn't all be at Silver Lake, right? Like, we'd have to do decreases here. And my question too, so I understand our assessment is going up because we're taking, instead of paying out of district tuition for pre-K, the money we're going to be paying for our assessment. So it seems like our assessment has gone up by 59.8%, but our day budget's only gone down by about 20%. So where are all those differences from?
So one of the things that we have been spending the past 3 weeks on is essentially putting everything in the Silver Lake budget under a microscope. So actually putting everything in all 4 budgets under a microscope and analyzing where the increase is coming from. And I have to be completely honest with you, I have been hoping for a month now that I made a mistake somewhere, and some point I'm going to find a $4 million mistake, and then I'm going to be the happiest person on the planet, although I'll be extremely embarrassed to have made a mistake of that magnitude. But if I were to find that, I would be ecstatic. So part of what we're finding is that the budgeted costs for special education for FY 2020, special education was under budgeted for FY 24 in all 3 towns.
By how much? Do you know? This FY 24, right? Last year? No, this year.
Well, after you apply circuit breaker, I think,
I'm looking to pull up that spreadsheet we've been working on. I don't have it.
Where am I? What year is it? 24? I was just trying to figure out what year we're in.
All 3 towns total approximately $1.6 million.
So, sorry.
So
So was not in the budget, but we spent it? It was not represented in the budget, but that money was spent, or?
It was not allocate. This is difficult because we're talking about special education.
I know.
So it's not like we could have said, no,
Oh, no,
you
no,
don't-
I
you
know.
don't get this.
No, no,
service.
I'm not saying that at all. No, no, I'm just trying to understand, like, you know, I mean, absolutely, like, I'm not saying that at all, like, don't, I'm just trying to understand.
But
like,
this was
right,
spent.
But it was money that was spent that wasn't budgeted.
It's money that must be spent
Right, must be spent.
that was not allocated in the budget last year.
And how was it, so, how was it paid?
We froze the budget. And we applied circuit breaker. And we applied grants. And we're applying for extraordinary relief.
We exhausted all the funds.
So basically, you're adding that increase into our budget with the anticipation, because I know it must be paid, I'm not questioning, I'm not saying that at all, I'm just trying. So now in our budget, we're putting it in kind of being full, like this is it. And so that's an increase that we're seeing.
So that is an increase to FY '24, and then when you budget FY '25 appropriately,
You're
it's an
including that.
increase on the increase,
Right.
and it looks alarming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does look alarming.
can I just ask a point of clarification? So for those, it's more for folks that might listen to this outside of this group. For special education spending, we all know that it's mandated. It's not something that you can necessarily predict. Like you do the best estimate. But I'm assuming that the increase above what we budgeted had to do with movement in the district, additional like new students coming into the district, or changes to what was requested. Are those all factors?
I'll defer to Chris, but I believe it's some of all of the above.
Yeah,
Yes.
it certainly takes in some of those things. I don't think that budgeting reflected what the actual costs were for fiscal year '23.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we
those, and then you kind of-
probably should have anticipated when we put last year's budget together that expenses would have been higher just for what we knew
Right.
last year.
for what we were spending,
What we
right?
were spending.
Exactly.
We didn't estimate how much more it was gonna cost for what we knew we had to cover. And then in addition to that, we may have accumulated other student
Yeah, or the normal
needs.
increase of 3 to 5%.
Correct, okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you, that's helpful.
I think that that's.
I just feel like, you know, we need to explain this to our community. So the more we can put that in kind of concrete terms for people, the
So,
better.
sorry, I need to, have we been under budgeting special education or under under allocating? Yeah, I just, I mean, I know it's hard.
A
What?
different way.
Oh.
Everybody does their budget a
Yeah.
different way. I'm more actual, what did I spend last year? Are the students that we spent this money on still going to be within the district for next year? And if they are, I take whatever the state tells me I can take, and I put a little bit more on it. So instead of the 4, 6, 9% increase that they told me to use, I used 5. I kind of rounded it up, and that maybe is a little bit more for any new students we may come across during the school year. Other people look at it and they say, well, you know, last year's budget was this, I'm going to add another 3 or 5% on last year's budget, and that's another way of doing it. We went into great detail this year with your budgets, right down to student by student, service by service, to make sure that we had all of the funding that was needed for the following school year. I'm not quite sure if that was, I wasn't here last year, so I don't know if that was the practice last year, but this went right down to the student level, transportation, you know, related services, contracted services, and so we knew how much everything was going to cost, and so that's why you're seeing that budget the way it is. Also, we're paying some things out of the revolving account, as I understand it, so even though it might not have been budget, but it was being paid out of the revolving account, now everything, you can see everything
Got it.
clearly.
Thank you for helping.
Yeah, appreciate it. And thanks for answering the questions.
Next. So these are the items that were added. A special education teacher, a part-time ESL teacher, a building substitute, but no additional cost because we were just going to use the substitute teacher line for that one, and the Hero Academy proposal. In addition, Kane provided estimates for possible warrant articles such as $10,000 for staff and student bathroom upgrades, $10,000 per bathroom, gym bleacher replacement, $45,000. And to date, we don't have enough information to give you an estimate on the water testing and plumbing that will be needed because there's still more testing, more fixtures, and more filters that will probably need to be bought this year before we can anticipate whether or not there's going to be a need for a warrant article related to the lead.
How much have we spent on that?
That was my question too, thank you, Lauren.
I do not have access to that. Can you see that yet in the,
I cannot.
okay.
Is that coming through, like, the Sarian invoices? Where is that coming through?
Right now, I mean, just contracted services, getting bills.
Okay, I'll have that separated.
And how much?
No, I'd have to kind of add up, just,
Okay. We'll get you an estimate for the next meeting.
Thank you.
And then, the bathrooms, the 10,000 per bathroom, how many bathrooms are we talking?
I was just kind of looking at all the bathrooms throughout the building, so I'd have to look back and see. We have estimates that are access to
Is
it.
that something that could end up also on the warrant as a separate line item? Are we that much into?
No, I think it was just something that we wanted to put on our document that, starting to kind of replace any of the outdated fixtures that are in there.
And has that already been encapsulated in the budget that we've been presented tonight? No.
So our next step is for you to ask any questions you may have about the line item comparison that Sarah has created for you, and to think about what you want our next steps to be. Silver Lake will be meeting on Thursday of this week, and they will meet again Thursday of next week. I think it's wise to start thinking about what areas you would be looking to, or what amount you'd like to cut the Halifax budget by, and/or meeting with the town administrator, contacting the town administrator about your concerns with regards to what that will do to the program here. So typically, school committee members reach out to the town through the town administrator to begin to express their concerns and to find out what the town can and cannot afford.
Okay.
Can we circle back to the Hero Academy? In our minutes, I reflected that we had asked for more of a breakdown for personnel and salaries. Do we have that for tonight?
I can share the ones that we kind of pulled together.
I just feel like at this point, we can't do
I
anything beyond a
agree.
level budget except for the building substitute that doesn't cost anything. I don't see how we can entertain anything beyond a level budget, especially since we're looking at cuts right now. Like, it's sad, but it's where we are, and
I would just say that your ESL teacher, Kingston needs their full-time ESL teacher. So you may need to find a way to cut $32,000 from the budget in order to get a part-time ESL teacher.
okay, because it's
Because-
required, right? Or-
Well, you're not going to have services from Kingston. We anticipate, because they need their person full-time, that you're not going to have that. And if you go like a 50-50 split with Plimpton, you're more likely to find someone who will actually take this job. It's a full-time job. If you go less than this, you're going to be looking at contracted services, if such a thing even exists, and you're going to be paying a lot more.
How many students need ESL?
We have to provide it. So on the line item budget, so there's like, from fiscal year 24, we budgeted $99,791.55.
What?
So this is on the, yeah, that one.
Okay, so what line item are you on, so we can all find it?
Sure, contract services, consultations.
So is that L1.002?
2-9228-100-40. I made notes, but sorry, okay. So we budgeted for 2023-24, $99,791.55. We have spent $82,941.14, which that's, so we have about a little bit left there, but we're budgeted at $184,986. Is that just, again, being realistic about what our services are going to be, or?
I'm going to have to defer to Dr. Pam Reese about that one. So the consultations is part of the specs. So the contracted services consultations is part of the special ed budget.
Okay.
That was, I just typed the number in.
Okay.
So the contracted services represent anything we have to contract out of without using our own personnel. That'd be your OT, your PT. If there are independent evaluations that need to be done, somebody, a parent requests an independent evaluation, neuropsychological evaluation, a tech eval, all of those things that we cannot do in district that we have to contract out to either an agency or one of the collaboratives. And so all of those costs get put in there. We also have students that have home services as well. That's also a contracted service, so their IEPs have that. So basically, it's anything that's on an IEP service that isn't supplied by personnel from the district, as well as anything that a parent can request that we finish because we can't do it ourselves.
Okay. All right, that's
Tutoring was also there last year, but I think we have a separate one this year.
okay. Let me see. So transportation, obviously, that we can't really, I mean, there's some we just can't do anything about. I had questions though. So the aids for special ed, that's because we're bringing the paras, the large difference is because the paras are coming into our budget. Okay. So so the town overall can handle, they said $1 million increase, basically. So we don't know, I mean, we don't know what Silver Lake's going to do with their budget that will impact our assessment yet. So we don't really know what we need to do to bring it in line. As far as the school committee, what are viable options for us with providing good education still, but with things that we can cut to meet the budget needs? Because I feel like I'm not an expert in that as far as, to run a school. So I would like some advice, I guess, as far as, I know where our biggest costs come from too, which is sort of the really heartbreaking part of all of this. But.
And so we can go through and snip around the edges and give you several things that we can live without next year, but that's only going to get you a fraction of the way there.
Well, and if we take out the special education teacher, that's $65,000. If we take out, how much did you do the Hero Academy? I mean, I know I'm just 15, so that's 80 right there. I mean, in the ESL teacher we have to do, so.
So the ESL we have to do it at 0.5. If we do it at a 1 with Plimpton, it would be easier to hire, but do we need a full? Could we do a 0.5 and share with Plimpton still at that point? How many students do they have that need it? Could we still do a 0.5 but pay half of that?
It's 6. And I
They
think
have
that's what the
6 and we have-
superintendent was
Planning on doing
Okay, so
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
saying higher than that
Yeah.
0.5.
But we share
Okay,
with Plimpton.
I thought you meant like if we, yeah, okay,
And then it would be easier to find a single person to do
both schools.
like half
Okay.
here and then half
They-
potentially if it.
But they would still be a 0.5 total, or would they be a 0.5 just for Halifax?
Just
Just for
Halifax.
Is
There'd
there,
be a full-time employee, but we would pay half and Plimpton would pay half.
We're not currently meeting the recommended hours with our
Right.
current staff.
this might be a dumb question. Since there's only 6 or 7 kids in Plimpton, 8 students here, how often do they need that ESL teacher? Can we do a 0.5 and split the 0.5 with Plimpton, and then and then it's like paying for a quarter?
Well,
Is that a dumb question? I don't know.
no,
Maybe
it
is that-
depends on the needs of the students and how many hours they need. So if you recall, when we did an earlier presentation, I think Ryan had created a slide with the estimated number of hours. It might have been under preliminary.
Back when we talked about Lido, right?
So those hours are in there,
January
and I think it
2nd.
was pretty close to a 0.5, which is why we came up with the 0.5. The number of hours that, for the students that we currently have.
Do we know if any of those students fell out, so we no longer have to provide services next
What was the
year?
first part of that? If
Do we
it
know
what?
if any of the 6 fell, so they,
Oh, okay, thank you.
yeah? Meaning they passed
At this
the-
time, we don't know. They just,
Sorry.
no, I just,
I'm like, you're not
they
saying
just took
true.
access, so we're not,
We
We're
don't
not-
actually get those till the summer, right? Okay.
right, so, just trying to look at the number of hours.
So can I ask a question? I thought I had heard you say earlier that if we are hiring for less than a full-time position, we might have a hard time finding someone that's willing to take less than full-time in that specific need. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, so that is even more, you know.
That's right.
And then one other question, what if we don't have that person available? Or if we have a person that isn't meeting the needs, like if they're not providing as much?
Then we'll have to
Hours.
contract the service out.
I guess my
Okay.
question is, what if the district doesn't, if we just don't do it? Like, I'm not suggesting
That would be a civil rights violation if you don't
Correct.
fund it.
I'm just trying to underscore, like.
That could be a lot more damaging and
Correct.
costly.
Thank you.
Well, and it illustrates the importance of having the.
Correct. Which
see
I
what you're
don't
doing
think
there.
the general public always understands the implications. You know,
Like we
it
have to
sounds
do it.
like it's eight people, but it's bigger than 8 people.
It's hours that they've qualified for in
Correct.
instructional services,
Correct.
similar
And
to
right
a
now-
special education type of.
Correct. Absolutely, I'm on board with you.
Yeah.
It's just not right
No,
now.
it's just for, so we can tell people
Yes.
why it's
Yeah.
important. That's where we're at. We're trying to be able to communicate to people, these are the things we cannot budge on.
The estimate from the ESL teacher was about, 20 hours per week. There could be ways based on the student's needs to consolidate that a little bit, but it's sometimes based on the student's grade levels and things like that. You really can't just sort of like group them all together and just say we're going to service everybody. So that was the estimate provided by the ESL teacher. And also, while I think sometimes, to not have an ESL teacher is, in my opinion, is a risky move because of the obligations to those students that are required. And I think even if it went from 8 to 6, it could easily go from 8 to 10 or 12. And I think we've seen a rise in all three of our member towns and those populations. And so I think having that 0.5 is the recommendation is a good starting point, just based on the students we have now, and that we're seeing that need go up in each of our towns. So that's just a little background on what we're kind of seeing. And I think that's true across the state. We're involved in a couple of other cohorts to make sure our teachers are supported, and it's a need kind of like statewide.
So one of the things that other school committees have asked us to do is they've given us that we need to cut by, and then we come up with those areas. So when I say that we can cut around the edges, I mean, you're not going to be, with the exception of salary lines, you're not going to be looking at anything more than about $100,000 at most. So how far do you want to examine how many teachers this would look like? How many additional staff this would look at if we looked at just teachers?
So can I ask a question in general? I think what I'm hearing is throughout the Silver Lake District, we will be having to make cuts to staffing in every school, in every one of the 4 districts. Is that an accurate statement?
What we're going to do is first get lean in every one of the 4 districts. We need to consider whether or not we should do a 5% estimate. Given the underestimate of the previous 2 years, I'm hesitant. I don't think it's that big of an increase to do a 5% versus a 4.69, but we could do a 4.69 and be lean and be, still have the increase that the state recommended, but not as much as the 5%. So we can do those types of things. The other thing that Silver Lake we haven't gotten to is health insurance is going to go down.
Health insurance is not going to go down.
It's not. Okay.
So the
Sorry, Joe.
everything is always complicated, and I'm sorry. One of these days, something's going to be easy and straightforward, and then you'll see me dancing.
It'll be like, something's wrong.
The insurance estimate that I started, when I was building the Silver Lake budget, I was given the insurance information from the benefits coordinator, and I took the number off of it and I typed it in, and it was a 7.5% increase over the previous year, and that was the number that was in there. And then we had a conversation last week about how Municipal Health, Mayflower, I couldn't think of what the first M was. Mayflower Municipal is recommending a 4% increase on the health insurance. And so I was all excited because I was going to go in and take out 3.5% when I realized that I hadn't added any percent. That was just an increase in the number of people enrolled. So that was the bad news. Sometimes, though, things come with good news as well. The benefits coordinator had given me all of the current Silver Lake staff, including Silver Lake staff that now will be in Halifax and Silver Lake staff that will now be in Kingston. And so I asked her to go back and redo everything. And with the redo and subtracting out the number of staff that are no longer Silver Lake staff and putting only a 4% increase on that, it's like a $70,000 increase over what I had. So it's not great news, but it's also not horrible news.
Would you take questions?
Yeah.
Coordinators, 244 Elm Street. Did we alert the towns to include those staff members that are moving into their budgets, that they should include them in their health insurance lines?
We have 2 Silver Lake pairs that are becoming Halifax pairs, and my understanding is, which I don't know if I could, that they don't use the health insurance. But it's something that you need to be aware of in case. So do you always budget for, just like as a hypothetical, do you budget for everyone that can use the insurance, or do you budget only for people that are using the insurance?
What has been done in the past was taking the last year's enrollees and I don't know if that's a word, with last year's enrollees and updating the rates and then putting the increase on it.
Because pretty much, because open enrollment would be in the fall, so you would know now who's April? Oh, it's April here, huh? Okay, never mind.
Well, it has to take place,
Yeah, before the contract. Got it.
the changes take place July 1st.
Okay, that makes sense. I was thinking of other companies. Okay. But I mean, that's something we need to look at too, are the two pairs that are moving over, are they going to, did they have health insurance? Because that's another cost is. So, we don't really know what we have to do until we see what Silver Lake does, is that correct? Or do we, because I feel like until we for sure know what our assessment is.
It would help,
Okay,
I hate to say this because it pains me, because I'm representing two separate districts, but all of the children of Halifax.
right.
So it helps all of the children of Halifax in a bizarre way if in fact we do level services with the exception of ESL.
What about
So
the
that
subs-
when we go into Thursday night, we can say that all of the budgets are in fact level funded with the exception of one additional ESL teacher. I think that would be a good place to start.
Okay. No, I mean, I guess I feel like absolutely we need to go to a level budget. We can't entertain these above level requests.
And does that include the building sub or no?
Well,
No, but it's
Because that's pretty much a wash,
it's
right?
a wash. So we're not gonna be able to do Hero Academy and the special education teacher.
But we can do building stuff.
because it's a wash, they're
Okay.
using the building subline.
Well, okay.
Yeah. It doesn't actually add anything.
Right, but just making sure that we're not trying to save on that, but it's not, okay.
Yeah. So we can have a
Can I also clarify that $32,000 for the ESL right now, Ryan? Is it 20 hours are allocated to Halifax?
They're not allocated there. That's the DESI recommended
Yes.
minimum based on our students' levels.
Yes.
Those students are not getting that currently.
Exactly.
Yes.
So we are taking our teaching staff to try to help some of those students as well. So we have our support going in there, we have reading support going in there to try to help those students. But it's not really $32,000 that's going to cost us because isn't that money deducted out of the budget anyway? Do we use the ESL teacher that we're using?
No, we don't currently pay $32,000 in
No,
ESL
but
services.
we do pay.
We do pay, yes.
So
Yes.
it's really not 32,000.
No, it's not. Oh, you're right. So that, is that number
Maybe
proportionally
20,000.
lower? Yes, it's a little bit lower.
How much are we paying Silver Lake right now for our
I think that's
ESL
what I-
service?
I just signed these the other day. At this point, we've paid under, somewhere between, this is a rough estimate, between like 6 and 9,000 to this, and here we are like day 115, so rough. So
But those
take 5 or
students-
6 off the 32, so that's, Brian's point.
But those
So
students,
it's really an increase of 29 to the budget, but, well, yeah.
It is, but the only thing I would add in is, if we do nothing, we're going from underserving those students to significantly underserving them, because from what we're hearing from Kingston is that the need there is significantly higher. So we will not have the opportunity to buy those services. And to Jill's point, if we have to purchase them on the open market by not filling this position, it could be significantly more expensive than 32. I think that's the full picture of.
I totally agree, but I'm trying to kind of emphasize that
We're
those
already
students
paying
need help, so we are helping.
Oh, no, I don't,
Getting their
yeah.
recommended services, so we're using a lot of our staff members to support those students, so.
Thank you.
No, that's good. I mean,
My other fear is that if we, have this idea that we're locked into 32 and we have students move in that need the services, we could then be in a deficit in that same line item. So if we have this so-called buffer, because we've already been allocating some funds to it and really looking at it at the 32, it may be a better
Better estimate.
yeah, I just don't want us to be in a situation where we have the students we need to serve and we don't have the budget.
well, we've already made that mistake.
Yes.
You don't need to keep doing it. It doesn't make it better.
quick question on tuition reimbursement for our teachers or the professional development line. It went up significantly this year, and kudos to our teachers for going out and getting more schooling. Is there a way for us to survey our teachers to find out how many classes they might be taking, what the reimbursement might be looking like for next year, just to have a more accurate line item there?
You could, but it wouldn't be binding because contractually there isn't.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a picture because it went up significantly.
Yeah, and our process is before a teacher qualifies to use the contractual reimbursement, they have to submit approval prior to taking the course. So if someone's, right now it's March, if someone wants to take a summer course, they propose that to the administration building, we evaluate it, we sign it, we return it to the teacher pays for the course first, the teacher takes it, gets the transcript, then is reimbursed. If they're using the contractual allotment, we do have that third of a year lead time to anticipate the rise. So while it is, we don't have control over it, we do have some sense of, if we have a lot of teachers who have the approval, so Ann Smith keeps what's called the improvement sheet, so we have a sense, I'd say, a quarter ahead of when they're really escalating, and I think that was the case this year that we picked up that was happening. So we have a little bit of a lead time, but we can't control it because it's in the contract. The teachers have that right, and it helps it helps everybody.
In a lot of teacher contracts, there's a cap on the total amount of reimbursement for the year, and there is not a cap in Halifax.
Halifax Finance Committee has invited us to a meeting on March 18th.
I think I have that on my calendar already.
And so, and Silver Lake has a meeting scheduled for the 7th and the 14th. So I'm
So I
putting
guess-
that out there in terms of what you, at that, if you don't vote a budget tonight, we don't have another meeting scheduled to revisit after Silver Lake reviews until April 1st.
Well, I don't feel comfortable voting a budget tonight.
I honestly don't either.
Would we have to have when do we have to have the budget voted by?
45 days in advance of
Town
the
meeting?
town meeting. And I also wouldn't recommend voting a budget until you've had the opportunity to speak with Finance Committee, the town administrator. So,
But as far as can we talk about hypotheticals of what could be cut or what, is that something we can discuss just so we, yeah?
I would ask the committee to consider taking a vote to ask the Board of Selectmen to push off the town meeting.
Okay.
I don't know what they could give you to push it off to, but I think you need time.
Oh, we definitely need time. So we take a vote to make a request to the Board of Selectmen?
I would make a request to the Board of Selectmen to ask them to push it off the town meeting. You have questions that are up in the air. You have to discern what you have to come to for a budget. I'm really concerned that the number that they told you was $1 million for education. I would think that would be $1 million for the town, not just education. So.
No, that's probably worst case scenario, what we can,
It'd be nice to have that clarification.
Yeah, no, it would be, there's a lot of clarifying that we need.
Prop 2.5 is 500,000. New growth is been around 100,000. There's no excess capacity, so you have $600,000 to spend for the whole town. So if Silver Lake assessment goes through, the biggest budget in town is the elementary school, which would mean severe, horrible cuts to the school.
Right. Well, I'll make a motion to make a request to the Board of Selectmen to make town meeting later so we can work on the budget.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Right. I'll take Katie,
Yes.
Lori, Jessica,
Yes.
and myself is a yes.
Do we have an estimate for kindergarten enrollment yet?
So we don't get that for a while, right?
No, typically it was around between 80, 90, but
So you'll be contacting Cody, or would you like me?
I can contact.
I should know the answer to this, but when are the Kingston and Clinton town meetings?
I've heard that Kingston's already has a request to push back their town meeting, but I don't know when it is. Do you know?
It was scheduled for May 4th, so the deadline for Silver Lake is March 20th. Clifton's usually the Monday after Halifax. So
I guess my concern is even if we push back our town meeting, if the other two towns don't want to vote to approve the Silver Lake budget, we have to go along with that. So I think it's probably something that all three towns need to do.
I agree with you. Yeah. Yes.
I got a message back from Cody. He said, based on the recent proposal, the request for $1 million more than the town can absorb.
Sorry, what?
It's $1 million more than the town can absorb.
Right now, the requests are $1 million more than the town can absorb. So they're looking closer to $1 million in cuts between the two. And as you guys just talked about, you can't cut special needs.
Well, I mean, one thing I've noticed, and I mean, I hate this whole discussion, honestly, I hate it. There are grades where we've had enrollment, like, you know, the enrollment has steadily been declining at the school.
Except for this one.
Well, no, I mean, we used to have 600 students, now we're like 540, like over the last 10 years. Like, enrollment is declining overall, and it's also declining at Silver Lake. So what sort of options do we have as far as classrooms? What does it mean? You know, I mean, because that's the only place I know we can go to cut, right? Or
So if you were to look at the regular education classrooms and the average class sizes that came prepared in the previous, it would show you
right.
the total numbers and what would happen if you eliminated a position there in terms of the class sizes. So it would come at, again, what I think you would be better served by giving us a dollar amount that you want us to cut by than asking us to deliberate here in open session.
Okay.
What,
Well, it sounds like that dollar figure has already been set by our town administrator of $1 million between Silver Lake and Halifax.
So can we kind of, we'll give you that amount, but we have to see what Silver Lake does to see what we have to do, basically. Right? Or is that putting the cart before the horse? Like, you know, like, are we playing chicken here with Silver Lake now?
so Silver Lake could say the same thing and say, well, let's see if Halifax reduces their budget by $1 million. So at some point, there has to be some give and take.
Right. Well,
Yes.
so, okay, so.
Yes, I agree that Silver Lake will have more information. So we don't want to go too extreme tonight.
Right.
So I'm just saying, you may want to begin by something that you think is a realistic, albeit painful, request of what, an amount that we should cut by, in addition to the 2 positions that we took out.
Correct.
And we can work on that. Doesn't necessarily mean that that you have to cut those items,
But
we
you
could
would-
at least give you a proposal as to
Okay.
what that would look like.
So what does 500,000 look like?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out, like, if we, I mean, that's, like, percentage-wise, if we're trying to cut, I'm trying to figure out, like, how much is us, like, throwing a bone to Silver Lake where we say, okay, we're gonna try to cut this much.
Well, every teacher is about 65,000?
Keep in mind that when you cut, the contracts say you cut by seniority.
Right. So it's less,
So
it's not the bigger
You're not going to be
salaries.
cutting a $100,000 teacher, you're going to be cutting a $45,000 or $45,000
iPads with all our teachers.
And while your enrollment for the school is going down, your special education enrollment is going up. So you're going to need more, you're going to have to maintain the same supports in special education, so the cuts would come someplace else.
This is a silly question, but can you, I'm just fried right now with all of the numbers.
Yeah.
Can you just remind me what portion of Halifax is enrolled in Silver Lake?
32 point something?
Okay. So then, just my simple math brain, I would say if we took 32 point something percent of the million and looked for that money in our
I
budget.
was thinking that, yeah. So like 300,000? 320,000?
Yeah.
Okay. We will set about cutting 320,000, presenting that in tiers of what that would look like.
Can I recommend that we even go deeper to 500,000, only if we're breaking it in tiers, just to give us some buffer, because I'm concerned about the unknowns, like our water situation. We really don't have a dollar figure, and I'm not comfortable with that huge unknown. I mean, we could be talking $1 million just to fix that, because we don't have any numbers yet.
That wouldn't be out of your budget, that would be a warrant article,
Okay.
but
Typically, items like that would come out of free cash. So I don't know, as of 2 weeks ago when I watched the finance committee meeting, they had not certified free cash yet. But the ongoing plan for the town has been one-time items, capital expenditures come out of free cash, operating budgets come out of the tax base. So you'd be looking at free cash. Well, the town has stabilization. I mean, if the water pipes burst, insurance doesn't cover it, town pays for it through the stabilization fund. There is money available to do something like that.
Is that starting at $1 or at some other point?
Whatever point you move it in the warrant. But you have to be attending the capital planning meetings to know where the money is. You have to be active, you have to be involved, and you have to know what the process is with all the other items that they're trying to fund. I would make the motion on town meeting floor if the water pipes need to be replaced. You go from stabilization to free cash. You can't have a school without water, so.
Can you give us an estimate of what you've spent sooner than the next meeting for the water situation, please? Thank you.
Bottled water and then the testing.
Everything you've spent
Yeah.
related to the lead. That's information that can be shared, right?
yes, so Kate can send it to me, and then I can send it out to the entire school committee and say,
Don't reply at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that would be helpful as well.
Yeah, we got it.
we can do that. So that's what we will set about doing, that. What that would look like. And for Silver Lake, we will not include the special education teacher and the summer program. Should something happen and we're able to bring those things back, we will be the first to let you know. Please let us have these things for the students.
So our enrollment is lower, but our special education enrollment is higher. Is that because we opened up a new classroom, or is that because just
No, you've had a
regular?
gradual increase. A few years ago, you started at 17, you're approximately 21, 22. Go by the referrals, and you're up with the referrals this year as well. So the number of students, of course, we would expect to see an increase in referrals after COVID, especially for the students that were learning to read in the first grade and were home. But hopefully by now, we would have remediated that loss, any learning loss there.
But we haven't.
We have, well, for certain students. So now we're looking at the idea that the referrals are a little bit of an increase. And ideally, you should, any child referred should be found eligible. Otherwise, we would have the ST process to jump in at that point. So,
Is it a dumb question to ask about fundraisers and things like that outside of the PTO? Like, what if parents were wanting to start a fundraiser and maybe they could have something that raised enough money to do something? So I feel like, and I'm gonna go back to this, and the Heroes thing, sorry, I forget what it was called. It helps so many kids, and if our special education is rising because our children are falling back, don't you think that it would help to help them in the summer months? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
None of
Like,
us question that, none of us question. We
yeah,
all-
no, I know, but what if like, what if some parent wanted to start a fundraiser that raised $15,000?
I don't.
Do you know what I'm saying?
That's a good question. I don't know how
I don't
that
know
gets
how that would
funded.
go, I don't know, like,
Because like
say
the
I wanted to
PTO
have
can
a.
pay for stuff at the school, like I don't.
Right.
They can make a donation, and the school committee could vote to accept. They could then say it has to be used in a particular way, or they could say it can be used in any way that the school
Yeah.
committee sees fit.
And if somebody said I want it to be used in a particular way, it's not used that way at all, where's the money go?
Their PTO, they have to be, what's the number?
503C.
Yes.
To donate it.
If they are PTO or not PTO?
To be considered nonprofit, you have to
Be a
apply and be,
And I think Karen had said at our last meeting that they are working on that at this moment.
So nobody can just donate money to the school?
an individual can donate money to the school, but if you're going to be considered a non-profit organization, you have to officially apply to the U.S. government.
So they can put their hand.
Are there possible
Oh,
grants
Gordon?
that
Anyone can give money to the town to specify how they want the money to be spent.
Like fireworks and.
Well, that was my first, okay, so that was my first thing. I love the fireworks, I do, I love it, we have them this year, I love it. But that helps a lot of other towns when we need, as a town, that money instead. Like, a lot of other towns are coming to those fireworks, and I love it, I think it's great, I love all the things we do, and I think it's, like, my friends in other towns, they bring their kids, and we walk from my house, it's great. But like, donate it to the school
Well, it's good
instead,
to
not
know
just
what's
fireworks.
possible and what you can talk to people about. Like that's what, as members of the school committee, we can say, look, this is where we are.
We need
And-
help here instead of there.
I guess, yeah, you can advocate for what you want. I mean, as a, you know. And I guess thankfully, you know, Gordon said, like, people can donate to the town and say, this is what I want it for. So, anything else?
That's all we have for tonight, and
Okay.
except for executive session.
That's it.
Yeah, that's all.
That's all.
That's all. Does someone want to make a motion to go to executive session, not to come back to regular session?
I'll make a motion to go to executive session, not returning to regular session per MGL 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for contract negotiation, Halifax paraprofessionals, Halifax recording secretary, and executive session pursuant to MGLC 30AS 21A7 to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law, approval of executive session minutes from February 5th, 2024.
Second.
Can I ask one quick question before we vote?
Sure.
Did we at the beginning of the meeting, did we announce that we were recording?
You did.
Yes.
I was
Sorry.
just thinking.
No.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
Someone second?
A second.
Oh, thank you. All right, Katie?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thanks for coming,
Thank you, everybody.